After testing the O4 Lite against the O4 Pro with small and large antennas, I started wondering if the O4 Lite would do any better with the larger antenna. Though they are only provided with the O4 Pro, they are compatible with the O4 Lite as well, according to the DJI page on this antenna. So here are a couple tests to try to figure that out. This isn't a test of unobstructed distance, but only how well it can carry through trees and a rocky hill obstruction. I don't feel that these tests are very conclusive, but I noticed two possible conditions where the larger antenna was working a bit better. One is at the very edge of reception. The larger antenna held on to a functional signal while the smaller antenna was breaking up and stuttering enough to make flying difficult. The other is when flying towards the radio, the larger antenna seemed to have a better signal. If that's the case, turning around at the edge of reception with a small antenna might make reception worse. An interesting test would be an unobstructed long-distance test, which I don't have a place to do right now. If you're interested in changing antennas, here are some instructions. You want to remove the camera housing with the 4 screws on the underside here. Lift off the camera housing and lay it to the side. You don't really need to unplug it for this process. Underneath the camera housing, you'll see the plate holding the O4 unit in place with these tiny little Phillips screws. So you want to remove those 4 screws and lift off that plate. This is the plate you can see the underside of it, so it has the little pillars that are sticking down and the two pins at the front on the right side there. So be careful with those. So pry it off kind of gently. Mine was kind of stuck in there a bit. You want to unplug the small antenna. The arrow's pointing at the antenna connector. I have the new antenna just lying there with the wire underneath for now while I'm working out how to build up the antenna shaft to be tightly gripped by the housing. I wrapped it with some tape, then realized I needed to cut a groove to make it fit better, then pretty much realized that I didn't need the right side of the tape at all because it's being held in by the left part. Then of course you have to reassemble it with the 4 tiny screws. Again, be careful of those pins when you're putting that bottom plate on, and squish it down gently. If you have enough tape wrapped around the antenna shaft, it should be a firm grip in there and shouldn't pull out if it hits something, which could pull the wire out, so you want it to be strong enough not to let that happen. Then of course put the camera housing back on top and fasten the 4 screws on the bottom. I had to unstick my beeper there with the double-sided tape to be able to lift the camera housing off, but I just stuck it back down again. And that's about all there is to it. For my use, I have a Pavo 20 Pro O4 Pro for long-distance use, and I sometimes fly the Femto inside, so I reinstalled the small antenna with the addition of a thin wrap of tape at the bottom to make it more secure. If I was using the Femto for a longer distance, I would leave the large antenna on it. And that's about all I've got.